when you're the youngest person in the room, does that also mean that there is room for the youngest? I remember thinking this when I was at the United Nations, ready to give my speech earlier this year as youngest member of the conference. I was present there in my former role as Youth Ambassador for Sexual Rights and Gender Equality to the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As Youth Ambassador, it was my role to involve the perspectives, stories, and solutions of young people worldwide. In doing so, I consulted young people from all over the world. I used their stories to advise the ministry on the policies they were making. As a little girl, I already got my first taste on gender inequalities. I remember walking home from the supermarket when another mother approached me. "Oh dear," she said. "Do you also have to do the groceries yourself now, since your mother is working so much?" I didn't understand her question, because for me, it was completely normal that my mother worked almost completely full-time. "Does she do the cooking herself?" she asked. "Or are you only eating ready-made meals?" And she even took a look inside my plastic bag. I had forgotten about these experiences until I was 20. In the meantime, I had become an ambitious woman myself. Speaking at the United Nations, for example, was a dream come true. Again, I got surprising comments. How was I going to combine motherhood with my ambition? And some people, mostly men I must say, even gave me the heartwarming advice saying that every mother was already a good manager and that I didn't need to go to work to get that fulfillment. These comments opened my eyes. 20 years further, and nothing had changed? Why is it so hard to take young, ambitious women seriously? And why was motherhood even on the table? From that moment on, I knew it was my mission to fight for more equality. Fast forward to this prestigious United Nations hall, filled with ministers and delegates from all over the world. Whilst I was ready to give my speech, I looked around and noticed that there were women, but no young people present. And I remember thinking that it was so odd, because the decisions that were being made there also affected the lives of young people. We, young people, are the experts on our generation. Besides, we are also the largest generation in history. Statistics show that half of the world's population is under the age of 30. And yet, the average age of a world leader is 62. Today, I want to discuss meaningful youth participation with you. As a young person myself, I have seen and experienced how important it is to include young people into decision-making spaces. And as a young person who attended international conferences and met with ministers, I was often seen as either the intern or the assistant. And even when people did find out that I also had an important role, I was often labeled as cute. But why is youth participation so important? I think we can all conclude that the world is facing a lot of challenges and crises that we desperately need answers for. We somehow decided that young people aren't capable enough to be involved. Otherwise, they would have been there. Just let that sink in. Half of the world's population is under the age of 30. Can you imagine on how much solutions, crucial perspectives, and voices we are now missing out on? And I kept thinking, why don't we take young people seriously? I think I cracked the code. It's called experience. According to the dictionary, experience is something someone once experienced in their past and can now use or transfer it to everyday practices. Well, Mr. 62 years old, Did you do pandemics and climate crisis before? Besides, what are the rules concerning experience? Because the majority of the world leaders are incredibly highly educated. So I wonder how they got experience with topics like poverty or not being able to become a decision maker because of your social class, gender, or age. And let's be honest, the majority of the decision makers right now will not even survive the challenges we, young people, are worrying over today. Perhaps some of you in the room were even laughed at or turned down because you didn't have enough experience. Can I do a master in experience? Because then I might skip artificial intelligence or business economics. It feels like a secret society to me, with hidden rules. They will let you in when they think you're ready. The experience argument to me just feels like an excuse to keep very capable young people out of decision-making spaces. The lack of young people became so painfully clear to me when I attended a negotiation at the United Nations. In smaller groups, delegates tried to agree on the so-called policy document. The topic was a sensitive one: sex education. I watched a delegate give a monologue about the dangers of these programs. And for the people who do not know what a monologue is, it's that never-ending speech your mother always gave you when you didn't clean your room. According to him, comprehensive sexuality education increased suicides and promoted masturbation among 5 years old. Delegates from other countries even supported his views. If they were only able to speak to the young people I had spoken to as youth ambassador. Because these young people kept endlessly telling me that they needed better sex education. A girl from Sri Lanka even told me that sex is one of the most Googled terms within her country because people are so desperately in need of more and reliable information. And yet, I saw this very experienced white man saying the complete opposite. Besides, do you really know what causes suicides? Facing unintended pregnancies in a country where this is seen as an insurmountable scandal, leading to abandonment by everyone you love. And unfortunately, this still happens in a lot of countries. Women and girls are constantly at risk because they do not know anything about safe sex or how to avoid pregnancies. Abortion is forbidden. These women go to extreme measures in order to end their pregnancy. Comprehensive sexuality education could have prevented suicides, not cause it. So, time for change, right? But how do we do that? How do we involve young people, not only in politics, but in everyday decision-making and organizations? I am going to give you 3 recommendations in order to engage with young people meaningfully. My first recommendation is to give young people decision-making power. I just spoke about a delegate who gave a monologue, right? Forget that he was a delegate, and just imagine us sitting in a room as 2 colleagues. Now, there would have been no monologue, but a dialogue. And in this situation, we need to come to a solution. You see how much difference that can make? Now, we're looking for the smartest person in the room instead of the most experienced. My second recommendation is information. I watched a lot of organizations call a group of young people to give an opinion, and they just handed over a semi-final document full of jargon and references to earlier reports. And yet, they were the ones disappointed when a young person did not give the input they hoped for. Be transparent about how the decision-making works within your organization and provide young people with all the necessary information. Keep checking with them if everything is clear. Engage young people within every stage of your decision-making instead of only letting them read some final version of your document. I watched a lot of organizations who were scared that young people always want to change everything. This is a misconception. I witnessed an organization who overcame their fear and invited a group of young people to give their input on their strategy. In the end, the only thing that young people wanted to add was the access to mental health care. Both parties agreed that this was a very crucial addition. So I would like to ask you, how many young people are involved within your decision-making? And if there aren't any, is that because of the lack of experience or the fear of change? My third and last recommendation is to give young people responsibility. As youth ambassador, I was able to speak to so many young people, arrange as much meeting as possible, and could ask all the questions I wanted to ask, because it was my responsibility. Because I was able to do everything on my way, I was able to figure out what worked best for me, which made me experience the joy of achievements and made me grow in my work. In order to engage with young people, responsibility is an absolute must. Are you ready to see me as an equal partner? So I would like to ask you all today, dear audience, are you ready to involve the perspectives of half of the world's population within your organization? And if you are wondering if young people need to find their voice, they already have. Just hand them over the microphone. Thank you.